Ann Kent is the founder of Peas and Hoppiness, a meal planning app that puts more than 800 delicious and healthy recipes right at your fingertips. Ann is a registered dietitian nutritionist and a certified diabetes care and education specialist, a former farm girly, and a passionate advocate when it comes to intuitive eating and providing real food for families. Oh, and yeah, we're friends in real life. Ann, thank you for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. And like I said in the intro, we are friends in real life. We've worked on several committees together through Nutrition World. It's very cool that we get to do this. So I really feel very privileged to have you here. And if you're okay with it, I'm going to dive into a hardcore question. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay. So my first question for you is, if you had any advice or information that you could share immediately to benefit someone listening, what might you tell them?
I would say to be better, not perfect. I think so often we get so fixated on what the right thing to do is that we kind of lose the forest for the trees. And when you can just focus on making a better choice of two options, then that's going to serve you a lot better in the long run.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think that is such a great lesson for all of our listeners to hear. And so now, of course, they've got to know who you are a little more. So please explain what Peas and Hoppiness is and how did you come up with the idea? How did you create it? And of course, you have to tell us about the name. It's so cute.
Thank you. I love it. So Peas and Hoppiness started as a hobby blog over a decade ago. I came from the farm, as you mentioned. I grew up on the farm and then I trained as a registered dietitian. When I started working with patients in clinic, I really felt this disconnect between where our food came from, how to cook it in a way that tasted good, that was convenient and nourishing, and then in a way that also helped manage different chronic disease. I was specifically working in an endocrinology clinic as a diabetes educator at the time. And I don't have to explain to you how integral food is in the management of blood sugars. And so for my patients, they didn't know where their food came from. They maybe didn't even know how to choose an onion or cut it from the grocery store. So Peas and Hoppiness was my brainchild to play a part in integrating these silos, to teach people where food came from, how to actually make it in a way that was practical and nourishing. And then it evolved over time. And eventually, my most hands-on practical way of doing this is my meal planning app that you mentioned. It's called the Peas and Hoppy Meal Guides app, where I send weekly seasonal meal plans to help people get in touch with local farmers, be able to go to the farmers market. The recipes are written in a way that even if you've never picked up a chef's knife before, you can follow the instructions and create something that's going to taste good and be really nourishing for your body.
That's beautiful. And I think that sounds wonderful for adults with diabetes. That sounds wonderful for families who are teaching or educating their children on nutrition. And actually, I bet your upbringing in Kansas, maybe did that shape your relationship with food? Did that have an impact for you?
Absolutely. It did in a couple different ways. I think primarily, well, one thing is that my mom cooked all the time. She was responsible. Both of my parents worked full time on the farm, and my mom was really responsible for feeding the harvest crew in addition to her family. And so I grew up where cooking was just a normal part of life, and that's where I learned to cook. So I have not been classically trained as a chef. I just know how to use a paring knife because I help cut up cantaloupe to put in the guys' lunches for harvest. And so I come from food with a really practical standpoint, and especially growing up in a rural area, not every ingredient was available in our local grocery store. So when I write recipes, I'm thinking of all of those things. Are these ingredients easy to find? If you go to your local Kroger, can you find them? I don't want people to have to run to different specialty stores or necessarily order things online to be able to access their food. Secondly, what it taught me was the value of food as part of your community. And so I have these core memories as a child of everybody sitting around the dinner table at lunchtime, and we would be finished with our meal, but just sit there together for sometimes an hour afterwards, sharing stories, talking about our day, making inside jokes. And so for me, food is not only about nourishing our bodies, but it's also about nourishing our communities and our own soul. And that's what I really want to communicate with the app that food is accessible. I want it to be accessible and I want it to be enjoyable.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. And I too share some of those memories at the dinner table with my family. It was pretty important that we all came together. My mom would cook this wonderful meal and my dad would come home from work, we'd come home from our activities and to just everyone sit down at the table. It's actually something that I think really strengthens our bonds together. And actually, my partner and I do that now for breakfast. We have Thursday breakfast ritual. So on Thursday mornings, we get up early. I get up earlier, I guess, and I start the cooking, and he'll usually do some cleaning or help me with some cooking. And it's just this really nice pause in the week where the week is not done, but we get to come together, we talk, we get to explore each other with food. We get to chat over this wonderful meal and it has been so, I think, expansive for our relationship. So to get to do that with your family, your friends, loved ones, new people even is such a wonderful gift. And that makes me think, so obviously I know how passionate you are about nutrition, but what turned this passion or this idea into your full-time mission?
Mm. So like I mentioned, I worked as a diabetes educator in an endocrinology clinic, and like you probably talked about, I was talking about the plate method and how we can incorporate this and how to do it practically. But I found myself sending my patients to a ton of different resources. I was sending them to blogs. I was printing recipes for them. I was recommending cookbooks, and it felt really scattered and overwhelming for something that was already very overwhelming. And so I really wanted to reduce the mental load of meal planning and also give a practical resource so that when someone is like, I am ready to do this, I want to try something new. I want to do something for myself, that they could basically have a dietitian in their back pocket who is giving them examples of what the plate method looked like in real life with recipes that were good. So we're not going to guess if your wonderful Pinterest recipe that you pinned is going to turn out or not. I've tested these recipes. I've written them so that they're clear and easy to understand so that you can cook or maybe your spouse can help. We can get the whole family involved so that not all of the meal planning and preparation is on one person, but also to give you that really practical resource of how to translate what you've learned at the doctor's office into your kitchen and where you can actually make some change.
I love that. I love that so much. And that actually brings up a question in my mind, especially when you mentioned the Pinterest. We all have these cute little recipes that we find or the ones that we save on Instagram that we never go back to. Guilty. But I think a lot of the times when people find those recipes or they find anything online, especially nutrition related, sometimes there's conflicting advice, there's conflicting evidence. How do you navigate those types of situations, either throughout your recipes and presentation of those, or with maybe conversations with individuals?
This is such an important question. I'm glad you mentioned this because I do feel like for the layperson, for the average consumer, it's like everybody is on a different page. Dietitians are on a different page. There's like, what's even the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist or whatever? But I think what I found is that there's a lot more overlap than what we give it credit for. And there are some things in nutrition that we have very robust evidence for. And so I really try to come back and find, if I'm thinking of like a Venn diagram, and what is the overlap between these different eating patterns. And so there's a lot of things we don't know about nutrition. It's an evolving science and we're learning all the time. But there's a lot of things we do know. We know that fiber-rich foods are preventative of cancer and will lower your risk of all kinds of chronic disease. We know that balancing the types of fat in your diet can improve your heart health and your brain health and your overall cardiovascular health. We know that generally speaking, a diet that's rich in plant foods and the colorful foods is going to lower your risk as well. Those phytonutrients are super important. And so from there, especially if I'm working one-on-one with a client, then I look at that person and ask them questions about what they like to eat, what their pattern is, how much time they have to cook, what are their family like? Do they have picky eaters? How are we navigating all those things? And then we can build from there. Maybe they also have some pre-existing thoughts about what they want to do. So if someone comes to me and wants to be on a ketogenic diet, I don't personally recommend that from scratch. But if someone wants to do that, I'm going to help them build that in a way that includes the things we know are good and still honors their desired for an eating pattern. Same thing I would do if someone came to me and wanted to be vegan. We can also do the same things. We just have to pay attention to different nutrients. And I feel that my responsibility as a dietitian, I'm responsible for understanding the clinical potential deficiencies. And so I'm going to use that knowledge to help make sure we're meeting the gaps. But there's so much variety. And at the end of the day, I have accepted that my app is not for everyone. And if someone truly wants to be on a carnivore diet, they're probably not going to identify with my plant forward, my whole foods plant forward meal plan. And that's okay. I respect that. But um, as a dietitian, I follow a code of ethics that says that I am responsible for providing evidence-based nutrition information. And so that's what I really focus on. What do we know? How do we honor the individual? But also understanding where my scope is and where my limitations is. And so I'm never going to recommend a diet that from the literature, tells me may harm you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is such an exciting conversation because it's like selfishly I get to nerd out a little bit. If I could summarize some of the things that I just heard you say, first of all, what I heard is nutrition is not one size fits all, and what you do may not work for someone else, and what someone else does may not work for you. Right? So you have to find what works for you, and of course, there is some evidence of what works for most people, and so finding the guidance for that is essential. I love that you used the word phytonutrients. If anyone is not familiar with that term, you may have heard of vitamins, you may have heard of minerals. You know that those have some benefits, but there's also other things you may not have ever heard that give us benefits. Eat the rainbow is a great way to get those phytonutrients. I always talk about eating red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, white, tan, brown. If you can get those things in, I say it quick because I've been saying it for years. It really can make a difference. And then absolutely being intentional with that collaborative approach, right? Nutrition is not one size fits all. And what works for you may not work for someone else, like we've already discussed, but respecting that, coming to it from a place of uh, clinical evidence and kindness. That is something I think I admire about you most is I know, and I think that's a big reason why we align is because I know that how you practice is something I agree with wholeheartedly. I know if I ever had someone, I just had to send them to someone, I'd be like, okay, yep, go talk to Anne real quick. Like, you are wonderful. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being so kind to so many folks. And if you're hearing this, by the way, if you work with a dietitian or if you ever have worked with a dietitian and you felt invalidated, not considered, you felt like you were doing the bad thing, no, 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 can't, don't, shouldn't, da 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 da. I would argue that maybe that wasn't fair treatment for you, and I'm sorry that that happened, but there are providers that don't do that, and of course, Anne is a wonderful example.
I appreciate that. I think part of it comes from the intuitive eating space too,
Yep.
and the training that I've done in that. It's really opened my eyes to. I mean, I think I always aligned with the idea of intuitive eating, and if anybody's not familiar with it, there's a 10-step process to intuitive eating, but the basic way that I describe it is that intuitive eating takes the locus of control of our own food from external diet with rules, and it puts it back inside you as the authority of your body, which I think really aligns, Maddie, with how you practice diabetes education. That yes, we have information and we have clinical guidelines and we have a lot of research, but the only person with the authority on your body is you. And that's why we have to work at this collaboratively. And it's just as important for me to listen as it is for me to give you advice.
Absolutely. Even with the example that you said about preferences, I ask people about their carb preferences. If you don't know this, test yourself in your mind real quick. Some people like pasta most. Some people like potatoes most. Some people like rice most, or maybe even bread products. If you think about your dinner plate and you're like, what would satisfy me most? Chicken, green beans, and insert that other thing, you can kind of find what works for you. And here's the thing, we're not going to say any of those are wrong, right? As long as we fit it into this wonderful, varied diet, if we can, as much variety as we can have, then that is something that you can have. You can have it and then some, right? Whatever it is that you want, you can have. It doesn't like potatoes are not bad. Rice is not bad. Pasta is not bad. Bread is not bad. Unless you have like an allergy, maybe it is a little not so great for you, but those are the types of things that you get to do with a collaborative provider. Maybe I should say a collaborative dietitian is to find those things that you enjoy and fit them into your diet in the way that works for you. And maybe I should use the word lifestyle. diet lifestyle. I know the word diet, it has so much stigma behind it. So apologies if that was a triggering one for anyone. Just that mindfulness of our lifestyle with nutrition. And so, okay, so nerdy question for you because I just want to know. Obviously, you have the Peas and Hoppy Meal Guide membership and the app. So, first of all, I want to know what were any of the challenges that came up with creating all of that?
What are the challenges? I think that they're similar to probably the challenges that um, you have in practice. I think it's really like helping people get started. It's been really interesting to try to explain the value of the app to someone who's never seen it compared to when I talk to some of my, friends who are high users of the app. I've considered, decreasing the price of it. And I've had so many people tell me that I need to increase the price of the app because of the value that's in it. But I think because there's so much value, it's also kind of hard to explain how to get started and where to really dig in. So that's what I've been troubleshooting, and I have some focus groups coming up to help me figure out how to better onboard someone. As you know, for most people, it's not knowledge that they're lacking; it's how to implement that knowledge into their life. And as a dietitian in the clinic, at practicing one-on-one with folks, that's literally what I do. I do a lot of behavior change and troubleshooting about, okay, well, like when during the week could you go grocery shopping? Like, could you have some help? With an app, I don't have that one-on-one connection exactly, and so I'm trying to do that with the system that I'm creating. And so what I'm currently working on and what my biggest challenge is how to onboard someone so that we can take little bites and get little wins and eventually get you into that behavior change that you've been wanting to do.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And if anyone's listening, they're thinking, "Oh, I could see myself doing that. This could be interesting. I could take a peek. I could take a look." Then in the show notes, you will find some information on how to test things out and take a look at some recipes. So I'll make sure that you have that information down below. So huge thank you, Anne, for giving me that. And okay, now I have kind of a specific question because I know some of my listeners also have kiddos. And of course, I know you have lovely kiddos. And so here's my thought. In your own home, right? Because you have the science, you have the evidence, you have the understanding, the structure, the knowledge, all of these things. But also there's this reality of like, hey, you're a mama, you got kiddos, right? Not not everyone loves everything. Go figure, maybe, right? And so in your own home, how do you keep meals balanced? And do you have any rules or anything that you follow or anything that any do's or don'ts when it comes to food?
As an intuitive eating counselor, I stay away from what I would call rules, but I think of them more as boundaries. And how I would differentiate that is that a rule is this rigid thing that is difficult to flex, whereas a boundary is something that keeps us safe, but can flex according to the needs of our family. And so the short answer is I do have boundaries, but they flex all the time. The basic thing that I think about is I always go back to the plate. Are we including protein? Are we including a healthy starch? And are we including a lot of produce, about half a plate of fruits and vegetables? If we're not doing that in every meal, then I also zoom out. That's another strategy that I teach my clients a lot of times is that not every meal has to be perfect, but the closer you get to that plate on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, the more aligned you're going to be and the better health benefits you're going to have. And so that's how I approach it with my family too. And I use addition rather than restriction. I think that that's a very important key, especially from the intuitive eating space, so that we don't introduce any disordered eating patterns. I'm very mindful of that with my kiddos. We talk about what nutrients do for our body instead of coming at it from a fear-based approach. The example could be something like candy or sugar. I do have boundaries about how much maybe we're eating, but when my toddler is like, I want more chocolate at dinner, and I'm like, okay, well, you already had your piece of chocolate. It's time to add in something else because your brain needs some healthy fats. Your body needs some protein, and chocolate doesn't have that. It has some quick energy for us, but I need you to eat something with long-term energy because it's dinner time and you need to sleep through the night. So yes to boundaries, and with that addition, like food forward, what can we add approach.
That is that is fantastic. I think you took that in several directions that I admire a lot because it gives us that again that reality and the flexibility and the mindfulness and the kindness towards ourselves and towards our loved ones, which is just so essential and so fantastic. And it also makes me think about another question that I have is actually about diet culture, right? Because I think a lot of the times we're given mainstream diet culture. Have you gotten backlash or anything like that with diet culture, and how do you handle that?
Diet culture itself, I think, is a kind of a nebulous term and it almost means something different to everybody. So when I talk about diet culture, what I'm referring to is usually a weight focused approach. It's usually using some sort of rules. It can be tracking. Not all tracking is bad. Obviously, if you're running a manual pancreas and you're dosing insulin, you need to know how many carbs you're eating. So this is not a all or nothing approach again, but looking at the individual. So the I don't know. I think the biggest I don't know if I would call it backlash, but I think the biggest pushback maybe that I would get is, challenging our weight-centric approach. Especially coming from a place of endocrinology and diabetes, I understand that adipose tissue does create hormones. It is an organ, and so we need to consider how weight impacts it. But what I have seen personally, what I've seen professionally, anecdotally, but also what the evidence shows us is that when you come from a place of restriction or from body hatred or from just wanting to shrink your body, oftentimes that causes a lot of other problems. And so you end up sort of like in this negative cycle of restriction and then feeling restricted and rebelling against that and then overeating and then feeling guilty and then restricting and if you've ever been in that cycle, like, you know how awful it is and how hard it is to get off the roller coaster. So, the hardest thing one of the biggest challenges is to shift the mindset away from all we need to do is lose weight. It is so deeply ingrained in our culture, and especially if you've been dieting. Many of my clients have been dieting since they were children, literally. Dieting is not for children. Your child should not be losing weight. Like, this is a whole talk to your pediatrician if you have concerns, but, it's so harmful when you have been dieting so long to and it's so difficult to, think of that in a different way, and it's also so important. And I also want everyone to know that it's okay to want to change your body. I think that this is also kind of a challenge with the intuitive eating space is that sometimes the message of shifting the focus away from weight feels like, well, if I'm not happy with my body, then I don't belong here. And that's not true either. You also belong. It's okay to be uncomfortable in your body and it's okay to want it to change. We want to come from this from a place of love and kindness and long-term relationship with food and body instead of just trying to shrink it more. And I think gosh, I'm sorry, I could go on for this about this forever. But I think a lot of this is really important. It's really important to get to root cause. So, what is your desire behind wanting to lose weight? Is it health? And is losing weight truly healthy? Or is that just what society has told you? Or is it from a place of confidence and of security? Do you feel safe in a larger body? Or do we need to like work through some other underlying things? Is that why you're trying to be a smaller person? You think that you might be valued more in society. I'm not saying that fat phobia doesn't exist because it absolutely does, but you know, I never want to just treat the symptom, and I think that that's oftentimes what we end up doing when we just talk about weight or weight loss. So that was a very long answer to the question about what's the biggest pushback, but I think it's this weight and how we talk about it from both sides of the equation. It's okay to want to change your body, but it's also not okay to just pretend that weight is the problem. We probably need to dig a little bit deeper.
Absolutely. Thank you so much too. You apologize and you do not need to because I think it's important that people understand these things. And obviously we're in circles, in rooms, on boards that talk about these kinds of things all the time from a pretty high level. And so you might have just introduced an idea to someone that they had no clue about. I could see someone feeling pretty validated from a lot of what you just said on both sides. And maybe there's not just two sides, maybe there's multiple sides, hexagonal or however many sides there is. But yeah, it's really tough. And actually, one of my favorite things to talk about with potential new clients is, especially if they're looking for, I don't do weight loss, I do body recomposition. So I know that's technically not grammatically correct, but we increase muscle mass and then have a healthy metabolism, and maybe that includes a decrease in fat mass. And hey, that's cool. I talk a lot about this though. I tell people, I'm like, look, you will either love or hate working with me. You'll love it because you get to keep your results, because it is sustainable, because you get to have fun and live your life and do all the things, or you'll hate working with me because it's not an overnight fix. And I'm not going to let you just, hurt yourself to get this one specific goal, right? Maybe if that goal is weight loss or something like that. We have to think about what is it that we want for the rest of our existence, right? Because if you want to have a long, healthy existence, then maybe a few extra months on that weight loss journey is incredibly worth it for all of the health benefits you maintain. Like the weight loss I talk about, the body recomposition, you don't lose your hair, your organs don't shut down, and a lot of the times those types of things aren't discussed as well. Like skin healing is super essential for people with diabetes, and when there's a lot of restrictions, sometimes we're lacking some of those nutrients that help with that. So, having this factor on top of that lack of nutrition, and then all of a sudden you get an injury, and this happens, and you're not healing, and da 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 da. Da. I'd rather say not all of that. We have good nutrition. So I love, love, love so many things that you just taught. Thank you. And I don't know if it may be the similar answer or maybe different. So up to you. But are there any misconceptions of healthy eating that you wish more people understood?
Absolutely. Actually, just that word, healthy eating. It's ironically, it's so controversial. People in the intuitive eating space don't like to use the word healthy eating, but I think the reason is because for many people, healthy eating is let me redo that. I think for many people, healthy eating is synonymous with low calorie. And I wish so badly that would go away. It is sad to me when someone thinks that something is healthy for them just because it doesn't have very many calories or very many carbs or very much saturated fat. Like whatever, pick your nutrient that you want to demonize, and that is associated with healthy. And when I say healthy eating, I mean all of the aspects, not just balanced nutrition, but also your relationship with food, how you talk about it, how you move through the world, how you incorporate happy hours, how you incorporate things like alcohol in a healthy way so that you're not overcompensating with any one coping mechanism. So I wish we could just rebrand healthy eating so that it was truly more aligned with this holistic view rather than how it's been co-opted by different groups to kind of suit their whatever thing that they're selling.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And that actually makes me think of something that I often talk about is I teach people, especially people with type 1 diabetes. It's my primary clientele. I teach them how to eat a donut. Why? Maybe it's not my long-term nutrition recommendation. I'm not gonna say a donut for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is the ultimate game plan, but that relationship with the donut can be incredibly game-changing for the relationship with all other food. Insert any food, donut, pasta, pizza, cookies, cake, whatever it may be that suits your fancy, that's fine. And especially with T1D, I feel like we get so much restriction and shame around food that having that relationship and having the balance of it. Am I telling you to eat a donut every day? No. But number one, you can if you want to. Number two, your blood sugar can work out for it too. And that's the cool thing. I love this. I love that you're challenging the stigma. I love that you're challenging the verbiage, the vocabulary we need to. And I feel like it's so ingrained in our society that I don't even know what words I would use without those words. If those words did not exist, maybe they would just simply not have stigma. But if they were still stigmatized, what else would we use? I don't know.
I use the word balanced eating a lot, a balanced diet, but I think that that still is missing some aspect, is almost like missing the community still. And so I think that this is I I want to like take back words instead of just not use them.
Yeah.
So that but I think I love what you were just saying, and this is again, why I think we align a lot is even like the title of your book. That's what was coming up for me when you were talking about this. Like, you have permission. And when I heard you say, like, when I heard the name of your book the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like what I used to. That was probably bad audio. When I heard the title of your book, I just thought, oh my goodness, this is what I used to try to tell my patients with type 1. You do not have to be restricted. All you're doing is running a manual pancreas. That's what I would explain. Like, it used like someone else, their pancreas is doing it for them. So we're just gonna like drive a manual one and we can figure it out. And there's no reason that you can't live your life. So I'm just going to throw back all this praise at you too, Maddie. I love your approach and how you are helping people find freedom in this, especially with such a stigmatized and frankly challenging chronic disease to have.
Absolutely. The subtitle is literally "Eat Sugar," right? I'm not saying that we should eat sugar all the time, but you can. You can. That's the whole point. And I love that. I appreciate. Thank you. Yeah, it's something I'm very excited about. You do have permission. Like, live your life on your terms and incorporate great blood sugar management. You don't have to be diabetic and then try to fit your life back in. Usually that one doesn't work. It's not as sustainable. So we live our life, incorporate good blood sugar management. We figure it out as we go. We ebb, we flow. It's not always perfect. I always say I'm a professional diabetic and I still get it wrong. It's okay. Right. I've done this for years and studied nutrition for pretty much a decade now. And it is insane how many things people think are insane that are not insane. I know.
Yeah.
That was a big one. That was a big one. I had another thought for you. I had another question because I think with all of this being said, in a perfect ideal world, this is something I teach a lot actually. I teach 100% versus 20%. Stick with me for this. It will link to my question. So, on a 100% day, let's say you're not sick and you don't have the busiest schedule, you got a good night's sleep, you're feeling minimal stress, you have great nutrition, whatever's going on, insert all the things. On a 100% day like that, if you give 100%, that is 100%. Okay. Now, let's say you're feeling a little under the weather. Let's say you didn't sleep so great. Let's say you have a really stressful conversation with your boss at 2 p.m. and you can't do anything else but think about it. Let's say something's off in your life, whatever it may be. I call that a 20% day. And here's my opinion. On a 20% day, if you give 20%, girl math, that is 100%. That is 100% still. And so my question for you is, I think a lot of us don't have those 100% days all the time. We have 20% days, 50% days, 70, 60, 80, whatever it may be. But 100% is hard to find sometimes. So, what are some of your favorite simple go-to meals or hacks or anything that you use when it's not a 100% day?
I call these grab and go meals, and there are two of them on the meal guides that I send out every single week. They're basically either a prep ahead option or a grab ready to eat foods out of the fridge option that is in the balance of the healthy plate. One of those problems and why when we started this conversation, I said, be better, not perfect. This is one of those examples that oftentimes I think, okay, in order to eat healthy, in order to meal plan, I need to cook everything from scratch. I need to grocery shop at the farmer's market and at whole, I won't name any names, at a very expensive grocery store and only buy organic food or whatever like rules we have in our mind about this. And again, we kind of lose sight of the big picture where in reality, you could throw together a couple pieces of string cheese and maybe a peanut butter with apple and some baby carrots. And oh my goodness, you just built the healthy plate. You didn't have to cook anything. You didn't have to order out. You didn't have to turn on your oven. You can still eat healthy in a really simple, practical way. I encourage people to use convenience foods too. Again, if it's better for you to eat the pre-packaged seasoned salmon than it is for you to not eat any at all. So and I include a lot of these tips in the recipes under, I call it pro tips. My pro tips in my recipe, there's one in every one. And it's basically if I were cooking the recipe with you, what I would want you to know about it. So if there's any shortcuts, if you can substitute any ingredients, if you can make this a little bit easier or whatever, then that's where you can find some of these things. But again, coming at this from the reason why I integrate education like this is because I know, not just I think, I know that we are all busy. I've said to my clients a lot of times, you would be doing great if all you were doing were healthy eating. But it turns out you also have a job and a family and a social life, and you're trying to like play tennis once a week, whatever it is. Like you are, so you don't have the luxury of just planning your meals and cooking all the time. And unfortunately, most of us can't afford a home chef. So, what can we do? How often do you really need to cook? Because it's not every day. The answer is not every single day. It's 1 or 2 times a week, plus adding in some of these small things. Having those like grab and go, having your personal grab and go meals in the back of your mind is so helpful so that when you're on the 20% day, that's not the time to troubleshoot. You want to already have that idea in the back of your mind of what you're going to grab from the fridge, and you need to have those ingredients at home. Those items are your staples that are always on your shopping list. And when you run out, put them on your list for next time.
Oh my goodness. That's claps right there. I love that. And I want to actually give an example because, again, we're professionals in this space. We do it too, right? We're practicing what we preach theoretically. And I know we do. But the thing that I think about is so I went to the grocery store this week and I was feeling a little rushed and I was a little rushed. And this week has been a little bit chaotic, a wonderful week, but a chaotic one. And so when I went to the grocery store, I was looking at the produce that I was gonna get, and I don't know why, but I just wanted some pineapple. It was on the mind. I was wanting it. I'm very glad I got it, but here's what the options were. 2 options. Option 1, grab the pineapple, the whole pineapple, and it was, $7.99 at my grocery store, so whoa, I know, that's a whole nother conversation, but $7.99 for the whole pineapple, probably, yay big, and I I know myself, and cutting pineapple is one of my least favorite produce chores. I don't know what it is. I let the pineapple sit until it's almost bad, and I've accidentally wasted a few pineapples in my lifetime, so probably more than a few, but sorry, pineapples. But there was that pineapple, and it was $7.99. Or in the pre-made prep section, where you can get like fruit in plastic, there was about a similar amount of pineapple. It was maybe 10 to 20% difference max of like slightly less pineapple. It was already cored, it was already sliced nicely, and it was $6.99. So pretty much the same amount. And all of a sudden, that one I saved money, saving myself time. So I saved myself $1. I saved myself the stress that I usually have. And let me tell you, I don't think I've ever had a better fresh pineapple in my life. And that was because I made that choice that I know works for me. It was a convenient option that happened to do multiple things for me. And that's great. That doesn't mean that that packaged pineapple is any less beneficial than the one that I would have had to chop myself. It was pretty great and it's sweet, juicy, so good. And that is something that I think about in general. If you can find those tips and tricks, just like you said with salmon or so many other foods, makes a difference. Sometimes I get a veggie tray when I don't want to deal with veggies in the week.
I love that, and I'm gonna even, like, take it a step farther and say don't forget about canned and frozen fruits and vegetables. I think historically, I'm gonna put in big quotes, like, the healthy eating industry has really demonized these foods because they're worried about additives, that you can find these fruits and vegetables with virtually nothing added to them, and sometimes they're actually even more nutritious than fresh. It's because, I mentioned seasonal eating earlier, and fruits and vegetables have and their growing period, they're gonna be the most nutritious when they're picked at the peak of ripeness. But if it were out of season, then you cannot pick them at the peak of ripeness, or if they're shipped from a very long distance, they have to be picked before they're fully mature in order to ship them those long distances. For canned and frozen, especially frozen, they'll pick them at the peak of ripeness and flash freeze them, and so those nutrients are in those fruits and veggies. So don't be ashamed of using these. Frozen fruits and veggies don't go bad. If you're struggling with knowing how much to have or how much to keep on hand, those are fantastic backup options, or just plan A so that you don't have to manage your food inventory.
Oh my gosh, that right there, that's also one of our house hacks because we have a little ADHD in this house, and so sometimes we forget about things for a week or 2 at a time, and so having frozen we mostly eat frozen vegetables, to be honest, and all of my smoothies are frozen fruit, and we happen to have some fresh berries on hand and sometimes that fresh pineapple, but yeah, that's exactly how we roll, and I love that you've said that because I love frozen and I love canned too. Sometimes one of my cravings is canned peaches. No clue why. It's just a thing I enjoy, and it's great because I'm having canned peaches, and if that's the worst thing I do for myself, I'm pretty great off. I love this. Oh, man, I feel like we could do this all day long, but I want to make sure that people know exactly where to find you, where to find more information, and to connect for Peas and Hoppiness. So take it away.
The best way to find me is on my website, peasandhoppiness.com. I say hoppiness like the beer. It's with an O.
And it's
And you can,
linked below.
thank you. You can also find me on all of the social media. So Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube at Peas and Hoppiness.
Oh my goodness. And if you haven't already found Anne on social media, she's funny. She's so funny. Some of your videos, I even think about certain videos with the conversation we had today. I'm like, "Oh, I think about that video, or I remember this video that you did." It's really great stuff, and the intention you put behind them too, I know is incredible. I've had the privilege of working with Anne behind the scenes for some content. And so if you're looking for something intentional and something just so honest and real and kind and silly and fun and nutritious, then you found your spot. We will make sure all of the information is down below. Thank you again for today, and congratulations on your brand new book. I am so excited for you, and we will also make sure that that information is down below, just in case anyone's curious, just because why not? So books below, content below, try out Peas and Hoppiness below. But for now, thank you very much for joining us. And I know I will chat with you again very soon because we got to talk about some things for this upcoming year. That's it for today, my friends, but the fun doesn't stop here. If you liked this episode and want more real talk diabetes support, come hang out with me on social. Just search Type 1 Type Fun, all words, or head to type1typefun.com for tools, tips, freebies, and real-life resources you can actually use. And if this episode made you laugh, learn, or feel a little more seen, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you love. But until next time, live empowered, be silly, have fun, and eat some carbs.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.